There are so many moments in life when we know we want something to change. We care about it, we've thought about it, and maybe we've started doing it or even tried it. And then when it comes time to move forward or take it further, something gets in our way. We feel a pressure to do it, or we feel like we've fallen behind, or we start telling ourselves a story about why it shouldn't be so hard for us. Why haven't we done it? I'm Victoria Fontana, and this is No User Manual, a podcast about being human when life doesn't come with instructions. In our last episode, we began untangling what happens when our ambition runs ahead of our capacity, when we want to make changes, but we aren't there yet. And we explored what it can be like to slow down and tune into our experience of overwhelm and noticing what's happening in the body, noticing what thoughts are arising around this, and the emotions that come along with them. And today, I want to invite you to stay with that. We're not fixing it again. We're not pushing through anything, but really just simply exploring the way we relate to change itself and how we relate to it can either add more pressure or support us towards movement that feels steadier and more sustainable. And we'll explore a couple of ways to do that. So often, if we're able to notice what is happening after we bring awareness to our experience, right, through the body, through the thoughts and the emotions as we explored in our last episode, then there's a natural next question. Okay, so now what? And very quickly, that question can drive us right back into the effort or the driven doing, as we say in mindfulness classes, and push us into that, driven planning, into pressuring ourselves, or another version of trying to get it right or trying to get ourselves somewhere. And that's just part of our human nature, right? This is who we are. But something really subtle can happen, and it's hard to detect sometimes. That insight that we get from becoming aware can even turn into another should. It can turn into another thing we think we should be doing. And especially if we see ourselves at a certain level, right? I'm the CEO, or I'm the manager, or I'm over 40, or I'm the teacher, whatever it is, or I practice mindfulness. I should be calmer about this. I should understand the pattern. Why am I still stuck? I can't believe I'm still doing this, right? And without realizing it, with that awareness, we meant to try to soften things, but it actually takes us in the opposite direction. And so, we want to bring some attitudes to the awareness, first of all, which are kindness and non-judging, and keeping that open flexibility, and catch ourselves before that impulse comes in to start fixing again. And that's the invitation here. This is what I'd like to explore together with you today. So one way to think about it is in this context of trying to make a change, like we might do at New Year's or with some kind of transitional moment in your life, is that thinking that this change isn't something that we're doing to ourselves, right? It's something that we're actually in relationship with. I think about the change, I conceptualize the change, I talk about it with my friends, I plan it out. And there's a lot of things that happen before I even actually start to make those changes, right? I realize I need to change, or something happens and I get the bug to change. And then I start planning, and maybe I'm getting the materials I need to do that, or I'm learning something. And then once I start going into it, there might be some things that become difficult, like when we come up against a learning curve. So if I'm trying to learn the guitar, well, number one, my fingers are killing me. I can't get them to move into the right position. I can't remember the chord, all of these things that are starting to come up as kind of blockages or little moments of frustration. There's times where we start and we stop. We start the new habit or the change, and then we stop doing it. Or there's just those stages, right, where we're in a certain, point, like planning or, actually executing. So stopping, for example, doesn't mean failure. Going through difficulty when we're changing doesn't mean failure. It simply means that we're in the relationship. We're in the act of changing. We're engaging in change. And change by nature isn't necessarily comfortable, right? And so instead of asking, what should I do next? What would happen if we said, how am I showing up here right now? How am I meeting this moment? Am I being kind to myself? Am I bringing patience? Am I bracing against myself? Am I tightening? Or am I connecting with whatever I'm experiencing? Am I witnessing each challenge as it unfolds? And we can notice this again. We can always come back to reactivating that awareness or that mindfulness, and noticing what's going on in my body sensations. If I'm trying to learn guitar and I notice my fingers are tightening and my shoulders are tightening, that's how I'm relating to it. I'm tightening, right? And if I notice my emotion, it might be curiosity, or it might be a little bit of curiosity with a touch of frustration, or whatever's there. And I might have a mental narrative, right? Like I might be thinking, oh, this is so hard, or maybe I like that it's challenging and hard, or maybe I'm thinking about the pizza I want to eat later, whatever it is. And so we might be noticing, am I disassociating from this difficulty? Am I with it? Am I challenged by it? And all of this can help us kind of regroup, right? To say, I don't have to know what to do next, but I can know and sense how I am with what I'm experiencing. And so I want to invite us to a couple of ways to experiment with when we're faced with change that we want to make, and changes that we're not making. So let's take the example of the changes that we'd like to make versus ones that are forced upon us for this. Okay. So the first experiment is simply just noticing, and maybe you can try it throughout the week. When you think about the change that you want to make, just notice what arises in your body, similar to this mindful exploration. How are you being with it? What happens when you think of it? Do you feel pressure? Do you notice any sensations in the body? Or do you feel support in the body? Do you feel stable and maybe invigorated? So this tapping into the sensations in the body, and sort of letting it be a communicator to you with what you're noticing, and maybe even peeking out and noticing what thoughts are there. What is the emotional backdrop? And this is all information that we can use to understand how we're relating to this experience. The way of approaching it with mindfulness, with this awareness, and as a way to notice and observe and be present with whatever's here right now. So that's one thing you can try. And the other experiment comes from research by Keegan and Leahy, and it's called Immunity to Change. And I'm going to give you an abbreviated version of it, so please excuse any variation here. But the idea here is to explore that we have an immunity to change. Change is uncomfortable, right? There is something that we might be giving up when we change, like we might be giving up, again, familiarity or comfort. We might be giving up time, right? We might be giving up what we already know to be our reality, our identity. And so there are things that happen when we are going to change or want to change that might get in the way, right? And so maybe those things that we're kind of afraid of happening, we might not even be detecting. They're kind of running under the surface. So this is an exercise to help you identify some of that. And so there's some questions that you can ask yourself. The first thing is really, what is the change you're trying to make? What are you committed to? I'm committed to a healthier lifestyle. I'm committed to showing up every day for myself and journaling, or running, or I'm committed to learning more at work to help me do my job better, whatever it is, whatever change you're trying to make. And so once you understand that commitment, like say I'm committed to a healthier lifestyle, and the change I'm imagining connected to that, one of them is going to the gym, say, right? And so the next question is really, what are the things that I'm doing or not doing that are not helping, that aren't helping me make this change? And so, for example, maybe I'm simply not going to the gym, or I'm not going to the grocery store and buying healthy food, for example, or I'm making poor choices throughout the day, that when I'm busy, I just grab a bag of chips instead of some carrots or something healthier for me. And so we can list out all those things, those behaviors that you're having. I might be simply choosing to do other things, like I'm choosing to work a little harder instead of go to the gym. I justify, oh, no, I really need to get this work done, so I can't go to the gym today. Okay. And we're not shaming or blaming ourselves. We're simply exploring, like, hey, this is what my mind does. I, this is how I've been behaving, let's say, or these are the actions that I've been taking. And there's no right or wrong here. And then the next question I have for you then would be, what are you committing to by having those behaviors? Like, for example, I'm committing to comfort. If I don't have to get up and go to the gym, that's more comfortable, right? And so I'm committing to staying comfortable. I'm committing to maybe the thought of going to the gym is feels like a trap. Like then I'm going to have to go to the gym every single day. And since I'm not going to be able to do that, then I don't want to look like I can't do something. So I'll just avoid it altogether. Right. And so that committing to not being a failure or not failing at going to the gym or failing at having a new habit. So what are the commitments that are going on that those behaviors are honoring, those behaviors that are getting in the way of your original commitment? And then underneath that, you might try to ask the question of like, what am I worried about here? So maybe the commitment is, not going to the gym because it's going to be too hard of a habit. And so what I'm worried about is maybe seeing myself as a person who can't do that. Right. Or I'm worried about, not getting enough work done and that looking bad, like going to the gym would be taking away of my work life. And then that's going to look bad. Right. And so from there, I can identify those worries and, mind you that this takes a little bit of courage to explore. And so again, we're bringing in like kindness and we're not judging and we're taking it all very lightly as best as you can. We're not here to criticize ourselves for this. We're here to notice that this is an absolutely typical and normal pattern that we have as human beings. This is what our minds do because our mind is on this mission to keep us absolutely safe all the time. The only thing is that what it's experiencing as what it's keeping us safe from sometimes is not matched up to reality. And so when we look at this, we can ask ourselves then, what is it that I'm assuming about myself or the scenario that's keeping this whole thing going, right? So the assumption could be if I don't work, X amount of hours per day, I won't be considered a good worker and then I'll lose my job. And so going to the gym, for example, gets in the way of that, or taking time to cook my food gets in the way of that. I could be thinking, maybe I'll be ashamed of myself if I can't keep up that habit. And so I don't want to see that. And so the assumption is that I won't keep up the habit. And if I don't keep up the habit, I would be ashamed and that would look bad to all my friends and family, whatever it is. And so there's some assumption that might be going on and it might seem irrational to you as you put it out there. And so again, we're not worried about that. We're just simply trying to identify it. So it's a radical act of becoming aware of the mechanisms of your mind. And we do it successfully when we can do it with kindness and openness and even a sense of humor. Right? And then from there, we might explore, again, connecting back to really wanting to make this change, for example, living a healthier life, to working with those assumptions and saying, hey, wait, are these really true? Is that really true? Do I really need to? I can't take any time to go to the gym? Or is it really true that I definitely won't be successful making the gym a habit? Maybe I can find a way. Maybe I can reframe what a habit looks like in this realm. Or are people really going to think poorly of me if I set out on this goal and then I don't do it? So you can really start to reframe or deconstruct those assumptions that are not really true. And then perhaps find a path forward that works with you, that's helpful and healthy, and it's not coming from a place of striving. Because essentially, by not going to the gym through that hidden commitment, I'm really not serving my goal, which is to get healthy. And so their intention is good. They're trying to protect me from discomfort, but at the same time, they're keeping me from being healthy. And so that's a lot, I know. But I wanted to share this experiment with you as a way to work with change, a way to work with moments where we're trying to make a change in our life and it feels overwhelming and we notice ourselves getting into the trap of not doing it. And so if I do really want to commit to that change, how can I dig deeper and find ways to unblock, untangle And how can I understand how I'm relating to this experience so that I can make a choice about how I want to relate to it versus relate on autopilot? And so if you're in the middle of a change and it feels messy or slow, I just want to remind you of this. Nothing has gone wrong. In fact, everything's going probably exactly how it's supposed to. Often the most meaningful shift isn't about what we're doing and getting it done. It's about how we relate to what we're doing, how we relate to what we want. And we can get there with a little more patience, a little more compassion, and a lot less pressure. So thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with yourself. I'm Victoria Fontana, and this has been the No User Manual podcast, a podcast for humans like you and me and this life that comes with absolutely no instructions. And thank you for exploring with me today. Take care.